Hey everyone, Ace of Clay here. Happy Halloween. Welcome to another sculpting video. If you're new here, I'm a sculptor and every week I make a new sculpture, so be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any future videos. Today for the Halloween finale, I'm sculpting Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas. So like I mentioned in my last video where I sculpted Oogie Boogie, The Nightmare Before Christmas basically shaped my childhood. It introduced me to Tim Burton and Henry Selick, and I absolutely love everything about that movie. So I figured let's finish off Halloween with a bang and make everyone's favorite skeleton, Jack Skellington, my personal hero and one of my all-time favorite characters. I had so much fun making this guy, and my main goal for this project was to make something that didn't look like just another collectible that you could buy at the store. I wanted him to look as movie accurate as possible. I wanted to stay as close to that original stop motion puppet as I could. I think I did okay. You can be the judge of that after you watch this video, but all in all, I cannot wait to show you. So with all that said, if you would like more content from me outside of YouTube, be sure to check me out on Instagram and Twitter. I am at Ace of Clay, and I would love to see you there. You can also find me in my Facebook group, Snakes of Clay, whether you're a sculptor yourself, whether you want to learn how to sculpt, or whether you just want to look at a bunch of sculptures, be sure to check us out. We would love to have you. Now, without further ado, let's make the Pumpkin King. Okay, for this project, I'm going to start by sketching out Jack at the size I want to sculpt him. The reason I'm doing this is because Jack is a relatively simple design and he has very specific proportions. If one thing is off, it's going to throw off the entire design. Normally, I don't sketch before I sculpt, but in this case, I want to make sure I have everything as accurate as possible. So I'm referencing a full body photo of him and I'm measuring his body parts up against other body parts. For example, to get the size of his legs, half of one leg is about the length of his torso, not including his head and neck. Alright, now once my rough sketch is complete, it's time to start the armature. I'm using this aluminum wire and we are going to shape it out up against our drawing. And as always, all of the materials and tools that I use in this video are listed in the description box below, along with my affiliate links if you want to purchase anything. And I'm connecting the arms to the rest of the armature using some floral wire. We're also going to do this to his waist. And then I drilled some holes into this wooden plaque the size of the wire for him to stand in, and then now I'm bulking out his torso with some aluminum foil. For this project, we will not be using Sculpting Ultralight. This guy is so skinny, we really don't need it. And once that torso is figured out, we're going to go ahead and cover everything in some Super Sculpey Firm. I'm using Firm for the entire project. And now it's time to cover those skinny little legs with some Snakes of Clay. Now before I go any further, I just want to compare him up against the sketch. Looking pretty good. So far so good. Let's continue with those Snakes of Clay and then poke a hole for his neck. After positioning his arms and figuring out where the elbows are, I'm going to go ahead and cover these too. Later on in the process, I realized that if I add some Bacon Bond to the wire before I add my clay, it makes it stick a lot easier. Never did this before, first time, worked great. And I did notice on my latest bottle of Bacon Bond that they are not calling it Bake and Bond anymore, they're calling it Oven Bake Clay Adhesive. But just know, this will always be Bacon Bond in our hearts. Now throughout the process of adding the clay to his arms and legs, I have to keep in mind that they are not perfectly smooth. I have to make sure to leave them just a little bumpy so they match the puppet. And I love this about the entire aesthetic of this movie. Now we're moving on to the neck, and then we're going to finally start the details, starting with the lapels. Now we're going to finish off the bottom of his tuxedo coat with some little snakes of clay, blending one edge in with the rest of the body. Now for another level of detail, we're going to add some tiny snakes of clay to make the fabric look like it is pulling from the button. Alright, now for those bony little hands of his, we're going to trim our wire and then add some clay around that to create the palm area, and then I'm going to sculpt his fingers individually over some floral wire and then poke them into that palm that I made already. And looking at the figure, like all of my sculptures, Jack only has 4 fingers. After finishing the second hand off camera, we're going to start his tiny little feet with this little piece of clay. Shape that out with my fingertips, complete the other one, and then cap off the bottom of his pants with a flattened snake of clay. And I just want to add a little wrinkle to the front of his pants really quick. Alright, now for his head, the fun part. I decided that I want to make him with his mouth open instead of closed. I wanted a little bit of a challenge here, so I'm really glad I did because it actually comes out pretty good, but I'm getting ahead of myself now. Just going to poke out his eyes with my medium ball stylus. And then one thing about his head is that it is bigger than you would think. I think maybe I made it a little too big, but looking at the photos of him, it is almost as wide as his shoulders, and you could actually fit his head inside of his torso almost perfectly. So that's kind of something to keep in mind with the proportions. And then another thing is that his head is not perfectly round. It is actually kind of egg-shaped. In some frames, it looks kind of round, especially in that scene where he is opening the Christmas door. But for the most part, his head is smaller at the top and bigger at the bottom. It's subtle, but it does make a difference. And then after figuring out where his mouth is going to go, I added a little bit of a jaw so his mouth doesn't just fall off the end of his face, and I'm using this wedge rubber shaper tool from Sculpey to press out the inside of his mouth. This was a little tricky, but in the end it worked out very well. Now we're just going to give him a very subtle nose bone. And now using my Explorer tool, I'm going to press out the little lines that he has around his lips. Now before I start adding his tiny little teeth, I'm going to add a very small amount of Bacon Bond just to make them adhere a little easier. And to create the teeth, I just rolled out a very thin snake of clay, and I'm cutting off each tooth with my blade tool, and then sticking it on with my tool and fingers, whatever works. He's got a bunch of very small little teeth. Alright, now I'm going to add a little bit of Bacon Bond to the head and attach it. Alright, for the next step, we need to create his bat bow tie. To make this, I'm going to use cosclate just so it can stay flexible after it's baked and I don't have to worry about the thin parts breaking off. So I'm just going to draw out the bow tie like so, and then start cutting it out and getting it to the shape that I want it to be. And halfway through the process here, I just stuck it onto this piece of glass. This is actually glass from an old picture frame, and I'm just sculpting it on that so I can just stick it straight in the oven and I don't have to keep picking it up and putting it back down and screwing it up every time I do that. So we're just gonna keep going and then create the little bat head here. Now we're just going to make the tails for his tuxedo. I'm also using cosplay for this. Then to attach the cosplay to the Sculpey, I'm just sticking it on and blending it in. It works perfectly. Now for the final step, I just want to brush everything with clay softener to remove fingerprints and get him ready for his final bake. And then once he's baked and completely cooled down, it's time for paint. And then check out my new paint brushes that I got. Always a good feeling. Also got some fancy detail ones too. Alright, now for that, let's get started. All the paints that I use in this video are Folk Art brand matte acrylics. I'm just going to start with this dull purpley shade for the inside of his mouth, and then we're going to paint his teeth some off-white. And now for all the white areas, I tinted my titanium white with a little bit of brown and black, just so it's not bright, super in-your-face white. Now I'm going into his eye sockets with my new detail brush and painting them pure black. And now for his tuxedo. Now for his hands, I'm going in with a dark gray wash to bring out some of the details. And now for the painstaking step of adding all of his pinstripes. Using a very fine paintbrush, I'm adding some watered down white stripes all over his tux. And thank God these things aren't perfectly straight. It made it a lot easier, and this whole process took me about an hour. Now we just got to paint his bow tie. I'm gonna add my black to that first, and then of course follow it up with some more pinstripes, and then paint the eyes. gotta stop and take a little teaser photo for my social media pages. And then we're going to attach it with some E6000 industrial adhesive. Be careful with this stuff, it stinks and it's really bad for you. And I'm just gonna set the bow tie aside with the glue on it, just so the glue has some time to get tacky. Start painting the base. Now stick on that bow tie, get it positioned correctly. Thank God this glue is pretty forgiving. You can move it around as much as you need to before it completely dries, and then any excess you can just pull off after it's dry. It's really weird, but it works great. Now we're just gonna finish painting the base. And he's done! My second Nightmare Before Christmas sculpture, Jack Skellington, is complete. Let me know how you think I did in the comments. And that's a wrap. I really hope you like how my sculpture of Jack Skellington came out. I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty proud of this guy. I think he looks really good, and I am so happy that I decided to make his mouth open instead of closed. And I'm just really proud of this thing. Let me know how you think I did in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching and being here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and then follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Ace of Clay. Happy Halloween. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.